Welcome back, guys. We are here. It's the Brothers Geek Out podcast, and we have our first guest for 2024. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time out and coming onto the show. I know we tried to sort this out last year. How have you been?
I've been good, yeah, Kibla. Excited for a lot more, comic book movies to come out this year. Excited to read more comics. I think I've been catching up on that especially. So yeah, good to be here today.
Oh, no, that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Which movie are you excited for that's coming out this year?
Oh, as soon as I said that, I realized the movies that I am excited for aren't coming out this year. Well, I'm really looking forward to the Batman sequel,
Okay, cool.
which I think might be a next year
That's right.
thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And a lot of the new Marvel stuff like Blade, I know that's been in production. I think a lot of that got pushed back because of the strikes and the pandemic. And the general reshuffle of the MCU. So
Yeah. No,
I might be
definitely.
waiting a bit longer.
Oh, bless you. I mean, you had an amazing experience on the first Batman movie that came out. What was
Yeah, I
that
mean,
like?
we figured out that was when we first met, very
Yes,
briefly.
that's right. It was very briefly. You were in cosplay, uh, and it was at London BFI, wasn't it, in Waterloo?
Yeah, it was. So that was, yeah, really an amazing experience. I was lucky enough to be invited to cosplay as, a classic Batman character. I did a cosplay of Nightwing, which is actually one of my favorite cosplays. It's the one I'm kind of like most proud of, apart from my Zatanna, which is what I usually go
Yes.
for. So that was a lot of fun. I took a selfie with Robert Pattinson, Batman
Oh,
himself, and we were all like masked up because it was still kind of towards the end of the pandemic. So
that's right.
I just found that like a really funny photo because Nightwing would take a selfie with Bruce Wayne on the red carpet just to like make fun of him. And he'd like post it online. So I thought that was very in character for me.
No, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, there's like it's an amazing experience to be on like kind of like the red carpet and then seeing the stars and then watching the movie in that sort of grand experience. I mean, what was that first time for you or
I was lucky enough to have been invited a couple times in the past,
wow.
but I feel like every time I come on, it feels like it's the first time. I think the first
Yeah.
one that I ever got invited to was the Birds of Prey premiere, which is another DC
Yes.
one.
Yes.
Um, I'm always, I'm a DC girl, I'm a DC stan, so most of my cosplays are DC based.
Cool.
So I did Cassandra Cain for that one. I
Cool.
know they kind of altered her character for the
Yes, they
movie a
did.
bit, very
Yes.
differently. You might have, your own thoughts about that, but that was also a lot of fun. I had a nice chat with Margot Robbie about, the relationship between Cassandra in the movie and Harley. It's very fleeting, when they come on and sign, take pictures. But I think if you do manage to speak to like these stars and see how passionate they are, it just makes it like so special.
It does. It does. It does. An amazing experience. I think it's a great movie. I was there as well. I got to meet most of the
Oh,
cast that day as well. So
yeah.
we've crossed paths, even though we didn't even know each
Oh
other back then.
yeah.
But I think it was great what they did. I think, adapting comic books into movies is a tough job. It's not easy because you've got mythology of like, almost 80 plus years, and trying to represent that onto the big screen, and then introduce that to new audiences as well. And it's hard to, I think, as a creative, as you're a writer as well, to put so much mythology into something. How do you do it so that you can please everybody, so that
Oh
everybody
wow.
gets a piece of the pie, which is quite difficult. And I feel like the comic book
Yeah.
genre has suffered that recently a lot more because you have your set fans to the content that's coming out, and some people will be happy. You can't please everybody, and I know that, but it's it's hard when you're a comic book fan and you're happy to see your favorite characters on the big screen,
Mm.
but the amount of hate that comes along with it as well, where you've got true comic book fans, which I was one of them years ago when the MCU started off. I was like,
Mm.
I don't agree with what they've done. But it was only until the Avengers movie I realized, oh my God, they've created their own thing, and they've introduced these characters, beloved characters, to new fans. So yeah, I've kind of seen it from both sides of the spectrum, which I think a lot of fans should start doing, because as you know, as a person who's a creative and a writer, there's a lot that comes with it. It's not just you're easy, just put it out there and it's all easy to go. I mean, you've done quite a lot of work in your time period, and I stumbled across your page this morning for Rosanna. I know we spoke about it briefly before we did MCM Comic Con. What was it to you to get this done and this project lifted off?
Oh wow. Yeah. So I mean there's a lot to discuss based on what you just said. I feel like whenever we speak we always just get into all these
Yeah,
tangents.
yeah.
I wish we had a 5 hour train ride to chat
Yes,
on again.
definitely. Next time, definitely.
Yeah. So Rosanna is a original superhero story creator I created back in I think it was 2018 when I first conceptualized her. So I was really inspired by what they were doing with Black Panther, especially on the big screen. You know, the mix of Afrofuturism, so like the traditional African culture and the sci-fi elements. And I just thought I wanted to do something similar for where I'm from, Indonesia,
Mhm.
because we have such a rich traditional history, like fantasies and myths, but not so much on the sci-fi side of things,
Okay.
um, which I thought, you know, just visually seeing Black Panther on the big screen, seeing what they could do with these characters, these settings, it inspired me to start my own comic. So I started working with a team of Indonesian creatives. So I mainly do the writing. I work with, yeah, a team of amazing artists who managed to bring the character to life. And over time, we've just developed our original lore, basically. We're still kind of, you know, in the early stages of seeing how she became a superhero, like how she got her powers. So she's basically like a very strong superwoman type person, but she grew up on a small island in Indonesia. And it's kind of set in a post apocalyptic version of Indonesia. So there's a
Okay.
lot of like, she needs to go leave her island, explore the world to find out these secrets and to find these answers to, you know, figure out where she got her powers and what's going on in the world around her. And actually, I wanted to go back about what you said about adapting like
Hmm.
comic books to movies or, you know, whatever big media it is. I understand what you mean by like seeing both sides as a comic book creator and a fan, because I feel like not that I think a lot of people fall into this trap because people who work in comics are very passionate about the medium. You know, they appreciate the art, they appreciate the work that goes into it. But I think people in studios, for example, they see kind of comic books as not the end point. So like a comic book exists to be turned into a movie, to be like a mainstream, you know, hit. And I think what I've really grown to appreciate is that comic books can just stay comic books sometimes, you
Hmm.
know? They don't need to be adapted. And I think if they do, you know, if the story's good, then there there shouldn't be a reason why not to adapt it. But I think the person adapting it should kind of appreciate like the comic itself as an art form and be able to yeah, just be creative and still like respect where it comes from. People
Yeah.
need to respect comic books, I feel. So yeah, I've really enjoyed working on Rosanna. It just kind of not rushing the process. It's been slow. You know, we're a small independent team. And we're not really chasing for, you know, a lot of uh I don't know what you call it. It's just when you try to just get big, you know,
No, of course,
when you
yeah. It's a personal project to you, isn't it? It's
yeah,
something that
absolutely.
means a lot more to you, because you're representing your creativeness in it, your yourself, and the artists are doing their jobs, and it's I'm similar to you. It's not about how big it gets. It's about the person in the personality in it. Like when I do my kids' books for my kids, it's not for the world, it's for them So it's almost like your own legacy that you're creating. Uh, I think that's quite important that we want to see things in the larger picture, but getting to see it physically happen and put together, like that must be an amazing feeling to once you saw the first concept artwork, you must have been full of joy when you first saw them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, my team who I first worked with, Baji was my concept artist, and yeah, the way they drew Rosanna, so much movement, so much life. In Indonesia, we have like a very strong martial arts tradition,
Hmm.
and we have our own called Pencak Silat, which is not really practiced, I don't think, in any other country. But you know, if you watch like the Southeast Asian Games, like our version of the Olympics, you'd see like some competitions. I guess maybe Malaysia and Singapore would have similar cultural
Hmm.
backgrounds to us. And yeah, I think it's just cool being able to especially present the settings that Rosanna has her adventures in. I think people want new versions of like classical sci-fi stories right now.
Hmm.
Because sometimes when I pitch Rosanna, it's also like not just Black Panther, it's Black Panther meets like Star Wars, but in like
Hmm.
post-apocalyptic Indonesia. We want the familiar stories. That's why myths go on forever, but we want them kind of told in new settings, with like fresh characters.
No, totally. I think we've seen it. People represent stories in so many different ways. I mean, I still see Black Panther as kind of like the Lion King story. So, it's 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 giving your take on it. And I think it's quite difficult because I think recently, what was it I saw? Netflix, Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder, which I totally enjoyed. Uh and it's the story of the Seven Samurai, the Magnificent Seven. These are stories that repeat, but these are stories that stick with us because it means more to us because we know what it's like to feel like that. So yeah, I think critics are a bit harsh, but because I love fantasy and getting away from the world for a little bit, our world is uncomfortable as it is. We need our getaways, and it took me away. So it's I think relatable stories are important for us, like to keep that myth going. I think that's what it is. Uh, yeah, it's a difficult one. I feel for Zach after watching that because I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to part two. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet.
Yeah, I actually did see it, and I enjoyed it as well. I mean, I could see like where he was taking homage from certain things, but
Yeah.
he was clearly very passionate about it. And I think he said, because I was lucky also to attend the premiere, and so he talked a little bit about the movie before, and his wife did, who's the producer,
Hmm.
and she said he has been conceptualizing this since they first got married.
Wow.
So that must have been like 20 years ago. I don't know how long they've been
Yeah, yeah,
married,
yeah.
but you know, I assume, I mean, that's the thing with like creative stories, like creative work and art. Things take a very long time. You know, you see a movie, and you don't realize that it's been in production for like 10 to 15 years. So what might seem like it missed the boat, somebody thought of that
Hmm.
maybe before the market was saturated. And you can say stuff like that about, I don't know, the MCU, which, I do feel like it is saturated, but it's not really a slight on the creators,
Yeah.
um, their ability to like think of stuff, you know? It's
No,
just,
of course.
luck and timing and when you put things out to the world.
No, definitely, definitely. It's I always stand for the creators because we are creators ourselves, and I know the process that goes through it and how long it takes to put something together. And I'm always standing behind their back. Not everything's gonna fall short and work for everybody, but it's the process, isn't it, of getting it done. I mean, I've been working on a character for almost 4 years, and I still haven't even got to concept because I've been writing for so long. And you go through changes, you get other people's opinions, and it's always nice because when you see your friends or your family read it, they're excited and they'll tell you they love it, but you want constructive feedback so that you can work better on it. So then I
Yeah.
send it to other writers to read it to say, am I being a bit too technical here, and does the comedy work? or what is it that I need to change? And there's so much to it. When you were doing Rosanna, what was that like when it came to writing, and how you felt at the time, where how you feel like you're representing something here? What was that like on the mental strain side of things, where you feel like, will it connect with people or not?
Yeah, I feel like it's always a hard one. I think because obviously, as a creator, you're so excited to just put things out there into the world.
Mm,
But I think especially if you are really passionate about what you're doing, if especially if you come from like a more marginalized background, perhaps when you're speaking for like a group of people who aren't often represented in mainstream media, you do want to be more careful with what you put out there. You know, you kind of
mm,
want to ensure that that you're just doing the best that you can. Not to say that you should sacrifice your artistic integrity and your originality and all that, but I'm personally someone who, who is very conscious about these things. So I spend a lot of time just like speaking to people. The setting where Rosanna is located, she is down in like the eastern islands of Indonesia. So that's a place that is also kind of less represented even within Indonesian
mm-hmm,
media and like Indonesian culture. So we're just like a huge chunk of islands. Most stories, most of our culture is focused on like in on the main island Java. You know, I'm
mm-hmm,
from Jakarta, so I spoke to a few friends who live in Sumba. You know, I told them about my idea because I visited an island called Sumba a few years back, and I was like volunteering to do some teaching work there over a summer. So that's what really inspired me to kind of start the story there. Yeah, and I just did a lot of research as well, kind of read stories from other writers in that region, kind of read some academic articles about, the things that, like the environmental issues
mm-hmm.
that happen in the region. Just because I'm also my background is in climate change and environmental studies. So yeah, I think just making sure that I'm doing my due diligence and then kind of just going ahead and like yeah, full speed ahead with the story, really.
That's amazing.
Huh.
That's absolutely amazing that you go through all those key details to get to that point. And I think the listeners would love that, because I think it's important, as you said, is you're doing your due diligence. I've my words tongued up, but tied up. But
It happens.
doing that part of the work to get something out there, which is amazing, and doing that research and the details. And I think it's important for people to make sure that you do things like that, because when I created, basically the character that I created was inspired by a movie that I watched several years ago, which was in Interstellar by Christopher Nolan, and he
Oh,
got me
yeah.
interested in space and the black hole, and the way he just put it out there, it was like he made me think about out there more, which is amazing. And it created a concept idea for a character that ends up becoming a black hole himself. That was his superpower, but he didn't realize what sort of destructive manner it was. And sometimes I felt like I went into a deep hole of looking at reading articles and scientific papers about black holes and the singularity, and it was amazing how that inspired me and how I've interpreted that into the character as well. So guys, make sure you guys are doing your research and putting things out there. There's another thing I wanted to ask Jessica was, and this is mainly for the listeners as well, when it came to putting your stuff out there, like, was you quite strategic with it, or did you just wanted to say, like, you know what, let me just pop this out? Did you plan it out? How did you kind of wrap your head around which artist that I pick, and how did you do that?
Yeah, I will say that I have learned many lessons about this over the years. So I'm sure, you've gone through a similar thing as well when you're first starting out. Um, I think, yeah, when I first started out, I was just putting stuff out there. And
Hmm.
I did know from the beginning that I wanted it to be like an independent creator owned project. So I wanted to have full control over, who we were, what we did. Um, I hosted it on my own website, the comics. So that's what I went with. I know there are other websites like Webtoons or
Mm.
Tapas. I think I started cross posting on Tapas as well for a while, but I just kind of lost steam. And I liked it. I liked having like a hub just on our website anyway.
Hmm.
And I can't remember why I didn't end up posting on Webtoons. I think actually, I think I remember there was like there was a moment in time where like a lot of Webtoon fans were like very toxic towards creators. And
Oh.
I heard this experience as well. I think especially in Webtoons like Indonesia, because I was like, should we post it on like the Indonesian version on Webtoons? But I think just like the culture on, I don't know if you've seen this anywhere else, but you know, where people would just be like spamming creators for like updates, being like, where's the
Yeah,
next chapter? And like even
definitely.
if you drop off for like 2 days, they're like, you know, where are you? So I think that kind of intimidated me a little bit, but I don't think it should. Maybe I feel like now I would put it on there, but back when I was
It,
starting out,
it's overwhelming, isn't it? Because I've
yeah.
spoken to a few artists who and creators that have gone through that, where they're constantly bugged on when the next issue's coming out. And he put out his own webcomic last year, and he was like, it got overwhelming because of the messaging,
Mm.
and it and you feel like you're rushed to do something that you took your time on. And I remember telling him, just take your time. Sometimes you have to ignore the noise.
Yeah.
And it's important for your mental health as well, because you don't want to be putting yourself through. You end up putting out content that you're not happy with.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that you take your time with it. And yes, you're going to hear the noise, and whether it's good or bad. And it's a good thing if people are bothering you about it. But then there needs to be a set expectation for yourself as well, so that you're putting out the stuff that you absolutely adore and love as well in the process. And I remember telling him that just take your time. Like, you're an amazing artist. You've got a great thing happening, and it's something that you wanted to do for yourself. So take your time with it. I think that's really important. I think sometimes we fall under pressure because of how fast things are now. I mean, as you know, content now, and how saturated the market is now with mainstream media when it comes to, compared to comic book stuff that came out 20 years ago. We've got a new show coming out every 2 to 3 months now. We've got tons of comic books. Like, it's been so hard to keep up with the amount of stuff that comes
Yeah.
out. I think it's taking that time out to yourself, and enjoying it for yourself, instead of doing it because everybody keeps asking for you to do it, which is quite difficult, I think, at times.
That's a great point, especially when you compare how much stuff we have today
Oh.
to like how schedules were back then. I think even for, you know, if you're thinking of yourself, like if you're an independent creator, you don't have like the financial resources, like the deadlines, and kind of like that guaranteed. Yeah, I know there are problems with like the comic book industry itself, even if you do work under a big publisher, but
Mhm.
it's more of like a structure thing. Whereas if you're like an independent creator, you often just kind of shoulder all the costs yourself, which is also what I've been trying to kind of work on in terms of moving the project forward, because I was getting stuck for a few years. I was slowing
Mhm.
down just because, you know, I pay my artists as, yeah, whatever their rates are. I was like, if I want you on my
Yeah,
project, I'm going to pay you fair rate. But if I can't, they understand, you know, if we have to take a break for a while. And so this year, I'm hoping to build a more sustainable business model, which is one of the
that's good.
lessons that I've been trying to learn. And I think going on Kickstarter is what we are planning on doing.
Cool.
Um, yeah, there were a lot of reasons why it wasn't kind of viable before, but now we're at a point where I think we can. We have a few issues under our belt now, so I think it's the kind of perfect time to just have those print versions ready, launch the Kickstarter, and
Awesome.
then we'll be able to move forward.
Let us know. I'm happy to share that. Definitely happy to share that. That would be absolutely awesome, guys.
Yeah, I will do.
Yeah, please do. Guys, I've got all the links below to follow Jessica's pages and her journey. Uh, I did want to ask you about your cosplay journey. When did you
Oh, my
start getting into
cosplay
cosplay?
journey.
When did you start? And I know your character, but like, What was your inspiration? What was it that made you start on that?
Yeah, so I went to my first Comic-Con in 20 I wanna say 2017 or 2018.
Hmm.
So, fairly recent. I've met a lot of like seasoned cosplayers. And yeah, I was still living in Bristol at the time. So I went all the way to London and I decided to just go all out for my first one. I went alone. I cosplayed as Zatanna Zatara from DC Comics because I love her. I've loved her since I started reading comics.
Hmm.
I got into comics through Batman, I think, and
Cool.
then you discover his like side characters, and
Yes.
then I think I found Zatanna one day, and I just kind of fell in love. I was like, oh, she's great. She's everything that I love in a character, everything that I would like to be, and it was such a fun experience. Like I think going to a con alone, especially when it was your first con, not knowing what was going on. But I was having such a great time. I was like asking everyone for photos. I was like speaking to
Oh.
people. I was just running around like yeah, it was great. Suddenly I didn't even know that I had like social anxiety. Because it was such like an overwhelming experience in the best way. It just kind of yeah, it took over me and then I just kept coming back.
Caught the bug, didn't you? You caught the bug.
Yeah.
Definitely caught the bug. No, it's an amazing experience. I think uh representing characters that you absolutely love and feel for is amazing. I did when I was in my earlier cosplaying years when I used to do Logan, Wolverine, and I used to do Doctor Strange. And this is when MCM Comic Con was like held in Houston in like a hotel conference room. It was a really
Mm.
small event. Uh, but it was amazing to see. As you said, it is overwhelming to 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 take photos and people saying, "Oh my god, that looks amazing," and go through it, and then you're like, "Oh my god, I've got the shivers now. What's going on?" Like it
Yeah.
gets so much because you're like, "Oh my god!" Like it was so exciting. I did do a cosplay recently, which was like a 10-year break, and then I did Anakin Skywalker for the Star Wars celebrations.
I would love
As
to see your cosplays. I know you've
a
mentioned you're like Logan a few times, but I
Yeah, I
don't
love
think
it.
I've seen your cosplays.
I haven't shared them pictures in ages. Plus, the wife, she doesn't like the beard formation. She was like, "I hate that you don't have the mustache. It's not a good look." And I really wanted to get. I actually wanted to the last Comic Con in October. I wanted to do Logan, but she was like, "If you cut that bit off, that's it. We're done."
Do
Uh,
you grow it out? Because he has like a square-ish beard. Like,
yeah,
what
in
is
that
it?
one. So
Yeah,
I
what
grew
shape is
it
that?
quite long and the hair as well. And I was like
Uh,
ready to do it like the square beard and wear the suit. And she was like, I don't know about you cutting this part up. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. Anyway, she likes
uh,
some scruffy, so bless her. But yeah, no, it's a wonderful thing to represent a character that you absolutely adore. And Wolverine has been a character that's been stuck with me for a long time, but I don't know, he just looks so cool. He's got that look about him. And in the comic books, yes, he's 5'2" and it matches perfectly with me. I didn't really like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
mm.
I'm sorry to put that out there, guys, but he earned my respect after Logan. Oh my god,
Yeah.
he earned my respect after Logan because playing a character for that long, and I'm super excited for him to come back this year, and I think that's later on this year with Deadpool 3.
Oh, what is he? Oh,
Uh,
yes, Deadpool. Okay, of
yeah,
course. Yeah, that is the
yeah,
movie that is coming out this year.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
because I was thinking a lot of the MCU stuff I wasn't really looking forward to anymore, but Deadpool 3, I would like to see that.
It's a difficult one. I think the MCU have last in their phase 4 have struggled dramatically because they've introduced quite a lot of things. I personally think they took a lot of risks in the past 2 to 3 years with the things that they brought out, but they brought out some absolute bangers like Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, Loki. Like some of these characters, like their development is absolutely amazing. You bring in a character like Moonlight into a live adaptation, Oscar Isaac. Oh my god, it was I absolutely loved it. Miss Marvel, I get to see a first Muslim character on the screen. I've been reading the comic books when I first heard that they were going to do this character and she was Muslim, and the representation meant so much to me. I saw that program. I all I could see is my little daughter, but I was tearing up
Yeah.
every episode because I know that I'd be that dad as well. uh, so a lot of it connected, a lot of it disconnected, because and you said it, we're oversaturated, I think, and I think when they say you have to move with the momentum sometimes, and I think
Yeah.
after Endgames, they were like, we need to run with this momentum because we
Yeah.
made 2.8 billion. Let's keep going. And I feel like they oversaturated the market completely, because it was, you go, what's the word? This quantity over quality.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought the same as well. Endgame was they were on such a high point there. And I think that would have been the perfect time to just kind of regroup and be more selective and
Mm.
be more deliberate about how you're moving forward. And I don't know if they've done a lot of changes to their lineup since, because I don't really pay attention to the Marvel lineup. But from what I've seen, it's been pretty consistent based on what they've planned in the past. I guess they've added in like Fantastic Four and all that.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess all the TV shows as well. But yeah, I think definitely quality is what audiences want these days because we're not
No, definitely.
choice.
No, definitely. I mean, the superhero genre movies, including DC, in the cinema have suffered really badly, and it's not like they were bad. Like, I really enjoyed myself in some of them, and some of them I think just because of, and I shouldn't say this because again it's me coming at the creators, and I don't want to come at creators, and I'm not like that. I just feel like the products have been rushed.
Yeah.
The product has been rushed, and they're on such a tight schedule, and I was reading up on what some of the artists and visual effects people have to go through during the strikes. It's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, because I know what it's like when somebody, and it's not constructive feedback, when they just talk badness about the work that you do, and that's hard enough. And I've seen some artists come forward regarding what they've gone through on certain projects, and it's like, oh my god, I can't, this is what happens when toxic fans come out and talk about the creatives in the background, where most of the time it's not even their fault. It's actually the studio's fault,
Oh
and
yeah.
definitely the studio's fault. And I can come out and say that, and hopefully it's all good. I'm happy with that. But I stick with my guns now. The world's going through a weird turmoil right now, and yeah, I have to stand up for what's right, regardless.
Yeah.
I have to stand up for what's right, and if nobody enjoys that, then it's me, and it's up to you. Either you continue following or watching or listening, but that's just me. Like, I'd rather have the goodness and the right things come out of what I do, and that I don't look back at what I've done in the past and say, oh my god, I did that just because I wanted an opportunity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like, especially as creators, if as artists, if you're not really standing by your own work, and standing by what you believe in, um, like what's the point of it in the end? In the end,
It's
that's the problem I have with people seeing stuff like comics or movies
Mhm.
as just like content. I know you use it to just say things nowadays, but you shouldn't think of stuff as just content made for like audiences to consume and forget about. It's
No,
something that meant something to someone else who made it. And
exactly.
yeah, so everything you said, very true.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, comic books have played a big influence in our lives, and how we are as people. And I remember just a year before Stanley passed away, and I was at a Comic Con, and it was the first time the BBC had done an interview with me, because they wanted to know why people cosplay and why people are connected to these characters deeply. And it was heartbreaking, because during that interview, the interviewer asked me these really obscene questions about race and culture, because I am cosplaying a character that is not of that original ethnics. And I was like, that's not what it meant to me. The reason why I cosplayed, because that character connected to me. Those comic books connected to me. And that's why I cosplayed this character, because they represent me and I represent them in some form of way. But I never saw race in it. And I remember that interview was a horrible experience towards the end. And I was like, can you just not put that out there? Which they ended up putting out there, even after going back and forth on emails.
Mm.
And I said, I've never, ever, that's the second time the BBC have done that. And I'll call them out for it.
Oh, I'm so sorry
Heartbreaking.
that, yeah, that you had to go through that. That sounds awful. And yeah,
It was the
very
wrong,
disrespectful.
very, yeah, it was the wrong approach, very disrespectful, misleading. And when they put that content out there, because there was other creators on there as well, it outed them as well in what they love and what they enjoy. And it was like one of those processes where that person has been in contact again to say do more stuff, and I was like, never.
No, yeah.
Never, ever, ever, ever again. Like I can't believe you even had the guts to get in contact with me, because I remember the riots that happened in 2018 or 19 after a shooting happened of a young fella, and the riots happened across the country. You know, same thing happened again. You know, if you'd want to do an interview, but then it got misled again, and it was like, oh my god.
Oh my God.
So that was the first time. That was the first time. But the second time hurt more, because this is stuff that I love. And as you said, content is a short word to just kind of put it out there. But these books, they represent so much more. You know, they gave me knowledge of things, the difference between good and bad, and the struggles of a villain as well, when they become a villain, and why. You know, the total opposites of comic books characters. But yeah, they mean so much more, definitely. And as you said, it means more to the person who's creating it as well. So it's a weird industry sometimes. I think we do have some toxic fans in the process of it. But yeah, it's seeing both sides of the spectrum, which is like the most important part. And I always tell people that create art to, you know, yes, you're putting it out there in the world to see, but don't take in all of it.
Oh yeah,
take your time with it. Just, you know, it's yours. Like like everybody asks me, like, why do I create so much? And it's because I want to put it out there. I want to. My thing is inspiring other creatives, you know, and not worrying about everything else around you. Noise is always going to happen. It's for yourself. I mean, I see my my Instagram page is my memory page. That's what it should be to you, not what it means to other people. And it's amazing that you get to share those amazing moments with other people, because some people will connect to it. And if you can connect to that one person, at this podcast, when we started it, we did not realize how it was going to connect to creators. We didn't know how it was going to connect to people, because we get messages sometimes and I'm in tears, because a person who used to use substances, who used to love pop culture, and then hearing two brothers talking about how much they love pop culture inspired them to get help, inspired them to get back into pop culture and comics and movies.
That's incredible.
Like, it's an unreal, overwhelming feeling. We had a message the other day where somebody was really down, because social media plays a big part, I think, now in mental health as well, because we seek for validation. And it's a very hard part to disconnect from. And the message was, you know, I see you guys doing what you do, not seeking validation and getting views or getting likes, getting followers. And you guys just continuously do what you're doing, regardless of whatever the numbers are, because you absolutely adore it. And I said, that's the key part. Like, you know, I fell into a deep depression 2 years ago, and I went to Singapore for my like a family. My brother was getting married to his wife, and we took a holiday. We had 2 weeks in Singapore, and I took a complete break and kind of realization of where I need to be with what I do. And and I suffered it as well. You know, you seek validation, you seek numbers that are not really there. And that holiday really showed me about not caring about the outside noise. A lot of meditation and yoga helped with that as well. And finding myself in the process of why am I doing this? Is finding your why. Why do you want to do this? And it's I think for the listeners and people that are watching this, it's important that you just do what is for you and find out why you want to do this. Because some creators jump on this and they just want to seek that validation, which only lasts maybe a minute or two when that moment happens.
It's gonna go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how have you dealt with things like that when it came to creating these characters and putting your work out there? How have you dealt with things like that?
Yeah, I think I mean that's such like everything you said, it really resonates with me. And I think I probably speak for a lot of creators and like other people I'm sure who have, been on your podcast and
Mm,
engaged with you in some way. But I think having your voice in this community, in this industry, is just very important because, like you said, you stick up for what you believe, and it's kind of important. You can't control what other people say or think about you, but you
mhm,
can control what you put out there into the world. And you really want to be engaging with people in good faith. It's like that BBC interview. Like, these are people who don't really care about the industry, like don't really care about us as creators or as people. They just
mhm.
kind of see us as, quote unquote content to be put out there for their audience or their
That's right.
clicks. So I think that has also been what has helped me over the years, especially with like my mental health. Um, because yeah, it's so easy to get, not that I was ever kind of that person trying to chase validation and
Mhm,
like fame, but on a conscious level, but maybe like on a subconscious level, other people's opinions, they do get to you, they
mm.
make you like second guess yourself. And I totally understand that feeling. Um, but I guess my way of dealing with that is just being very it's very unrelated to creating at all, actually. It's just more of just living your life.
Yeah, no.
And just like, again, like you said, you did your meditation and your yoga. I do a lot of exercise personally. I just try to build my relationships with other people, like who I care
Mm,
about, my friends, my family. And I think the more you get to know yourself, the more you're kind of comfortable in your life, the more you're feeling secure in your own identity and like your place in this world, uh, like the less you have to worry about, not just as a
mhm,
creator, but in life. Whereas I feel like if you are lacking in those things, if you are lacking in healthy relationships, kind of healthy habits and all that, and creating is like the only thing you have, if you think that like your art is the only thing that represents you, then you kind of live or die by how well your art does. And I think it's healthy
exactly.
to have that amount of separation. And I think that's something that, I learned partly from therapy, partly from like
Mhm.
other, just reading books about just developing a healthy lifestyle and just making sure that, yeah, I'm aware of the things I can control and the things I can't control.
No, of course, totally, totally. Absolutely amazing. I've taken up enough of your time, Jessica. I really want to say a massive thank you for taking part, being our first guest in 2024. And I'm sure we will definitely catch up and have more episodes because I want to know more about Rosanna. I want to know when you do the Kickstarter so we can share it with the listeners as well. But absolutely, absolutely, like really happy for you to come on. And where can the people find you? Where I have the links in the description. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, so I'm mainly active on Instagram, so at jginting.com. I have a website where you can see, the stuff that I make, jessicajginting.com. Oh, no, actually, sorry, it's jessicajamalimginting.com.
Awesome.
And I'm also on YouTube because when I'm not doing creating stuff, in comics, I'm usually reviewing comics on YouTube, or I'm
Awesome.
reviewing movies. Or now I've recently also started documenting my art journey, because I
Awesome.
started getting into art the past few years again. So yeah, I'm on Jessica J. Ginting on YouTube, so you can find me there.
Guys,
And yeah, it's been so great being on this show, Kibla. Thank you.
no, absolute pleasure, guys. The links are in the description below. Make sure you're following Jessica on her journey. She's got a wonderful journey at the moment, and I mean, we spoke properly on our journey to MCM Comic Con, and we did our first panel, and I was so nervous. Even though I do a podcast and I speak to everybody, I was still so nervous. I speak to guests every day almost, and I still got nervous. But Jessica and Rob kept me calm and composed, and it was an amazing experience from pain to power. Which there's a couple of clips, guys, that are on the channel. We're going to be sharing some more as well. I just want to say a personal thank you to everybody that listens to the podcast, that watches the podcast, and the lovely messages we get. Like I can't thank you guys enough, and my brother as well. With the messages that we get, it is overwhelming, and we are so grateful, and we're so thankful that you guys do watch and listen as well. But make sure you catch us on all platform streaming services. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and if you do want to see our beautiful faces, which sometimes most people do once they hear it, come on YouTube. We're on YouTube as well, so you'll see the footage on here as well. And yeah, that's it, I think, from me. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on.
Thank you, Kibla.